Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning into today's live streaming. This is a special emergency stream with Hekmat Abu Khatib. We are going to cover the atrocities in Syria, something that I have not seen probably since 2014, 2015, when ISIS and al-Nusra Front were on a spree of mass executions and killings for the people because of their religious or ethnic background, and this has been repeated again. Today is the 7th of March, 2025. We live in the 21st century. You may think that such atrocities are only in history books. However, we are watching them live now on video. The numbers are with hundreds. The HTS, so-called HTS militants, stormed many of the towns and villages in the coastal line of Syria, coming from Idlib, coming from Aleppo, Homs, Hama, and they have executed many civilians, including children and women, with cold blood. And this is a very sad day for Syria. Some people say this is the start of a sectarian war. Some say this is the beginning of a civil war. I don't really know what I should call it, to be honest with you. I don't want to stick with classifications, but what's happening is definitely terrorism against the Syrian people, regardless of their ethnic and religious backgrounds. For those who are looking for footage, of course, we cannot show you on YouTube because then the channel would be completely deleted. If you have let's say, strong heart and you're so much curious about what's going on, you can check my personal X account under my personal name, Kevork Almassian. I'm personally, to be honest, I'm not posting. I'm just reposting from other people's pages. But just watching one of them, you get the clue and understand what's going on. Hekmat, thank you for coming. You're also Syrian. You're following, I'm sure, with horror what's happening in the country. This has been anticipated since the fall of the Assad regime. Many people warned against the type of a governance like the one al-Julani is trying to establish, but we were promised that al-Julani is now inclusive, al-Julani is diversity friendly, and he's going to change his mindset and mentality. And he changed his clothings, but it seems the core is the same. How do you see this sectarian violence in Latakia? Were you surprised? Were you shocked? How do you classify it? Let's just talk about it as two Syrians watching this footage.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kevork. As you put it, it's harrowing. It's very sad to see. As a Syrian person, seeing what used to be my country fall apart into sectarian violence that's always been in the background. It's always been deep within. It was everyone thinks about it. It's something that's part of the Syrian psyche, but bubbling to the fore. In every historical revolution or regime change operation, at the conclusion of such historical event, you see history repeats itself. You see mass sectarian violence, or you see mass ethnic violence. You see population movements, like what happened between India and Pakistan. 1 million people died. Millions of people were forced to move from one place to another, have to cross borders. We're seeing a microcosm of that in Syria. For the longest time, we had 4 million Alawites, 2 million Christians, 2 million Druze, some other Shias, some other Circassians, some other Syriacs, Chaldeans. And now these bonds that used to be defined by the sovereign state of Syria are falling apart, and it's breaking at the seams. The definitions of a Syrian national, a Syrian civilian, no longer holds. And with that comes all of that inner hatred that has been stoked for so many years and just put in the background for so many generations, really. It's all bubbling up, and now it's terrifying what we're seeing online.
Where does this hatred come from, Hekmat?
It comes from history, really. It comes from the Ottomans. When they came, they chose their preferred groups. They supported the Sunnis. When the French came with their mandate, they supported the Alawites and the other minorities in the country. And generations of imperialism, whether it be Turkish through the Ottomans or the French or those before them, they've constantly pit one group of the Syrian society against another and elevated one at the expense of the other. And unfortunately, Syria was not able to develop and was not able to offer something to its citizens as a defining sovereign identity that goes beyond sect of Islam or sect of Christianity. So these people everywhere just held on to this identity as the main identity, not as a Syrian. They don't see themselves as Syrians. They see themselves as Alawite first, or as Sunni first, or even in my family. I mean, I will admit that there's a little bit of sectarianism where we see ourselves as Syrian Christians or Christian Syrians, depending on the day. So that hatred was also invested into, especially in the last 14 years, and even before in the Iraq War. There was an imperialist project in this land of ours in the Middle East that saw as a great boon for the achievement of its goals if it was able to divide these groups into sectarian ideologies and have them commit all their efforts into infighting. So, yeah, I mean,
Hikmat, we also learned a lot from history. You also know the history. I also know the history. I'm ethnic Armenian, and 1.5 million of my people got murdered 110 years ago. And today, in 2025, even though I know from history books who is responsible for it, including the Ottoman Turks, they were Kurdish also gangs hunting down Armenians. I haven't, and I'm sure your case is also similar. We didn't grow up on hatred. Like, we didn't grow up on wishing the death for others or wanting to take revenge now after 110 years. This is something that is very, I was shocked. Maybe I was living in a bubble in Syria, or I don't know, maybe I didn't socialize enough with everyone, or some people changed their mind. But there was something that changed after 2011, that you see killing has become like normalized. Like, you need to kill in order to achieve your goal. And then you have people see you, and then you're an Armenian, you don't deserve to live, like, this is something that is really serious. And I thought, just in my naive mind, that these things do not exist in Syria. And then all of a sudden it blew up to our faces.
Yeah, it's really depressing. I mean, I've read a lot of history books about Syria and the region more broadly and the Arab world. And in the modern history of these lands, figures like Hafiz al-Assad were known as leaders. They're Arab leaders or even Muslim leaders. No one knew he was Alawites. Same with Hassan Nasrallah. He was seen as a hero of the Arab world just because of his stance against the Israeli occupation. And then in 2001 and onwards, 2003, once the Iraq War starts, the sectarian nature of each individual leader in the Arab world becomes prominent and becomes their defining identifier for the masses. And yeah, I mean, we can blame a lot of people. Mohammed bin Salman is now trying to rid his country of the really fascistic view of Sunni Islam that has been exported for so many years, for so many generations and decades. But it's too little too late. I mean, the aftermath of generations of sectarian identity exported in the way that it was from the hallways of Medina and Mecca and from Doha and from Abu Dhabi, it can't be undone in one decade. It's a train that is hard to stop, and we're seeing the aftermath right now in the coastal cities and the coastal towns of our country.
Look, even if Saudi Arabia backs off from supporting this type of ideology, then you have Qatar now filling the vacuum. You see the coverage of Al Jazeera. They're disgusting what they're doing nowadays with Syria, calling people regime remnants, those who are getting killed in the streets in summary executions. How do they justify all these women and children being hunted down in the streets, and even unarmed men? Like, do they not have souls? Of course they do. Like, this type of coverage is just inciting for more violence, saying, for example, this regime remnants received cash money from Iraqi militias and from Hezbollah. What are they trying to indicate here? They're trying to say the Shias are supporting the Alawites there, so this is a sectarian war, and then Jolani can unleash his brutality over the people. There is blood in the hands of Al Jazeera as well.
Yeah, I mean, Al Jazeera has had blood on their hands for, decades now. But it's outstanding that they've allowed for a new sectarian language to emerge. A lot of people criticize the former regime for using language like, I don't know if you remember, they would always use the word mundas, or this person.
Mundas, yeah, infiltrator.
Essentially, yeah, infiltrator, to justify killing anyone that they wanted to kill, or anyone that they had already killed, to justify that they were, hidden in plain clothes, and that's why they were targeted. They're doing the exact same thing now. They're doing the exact same thing. They're saying that all of these people are remnants, fulul al-nizam, a new terminology that came in, and it's a simple way of just hiding the real terminology, the real nomenclature that they're trying to go with, which is sectarian, which is to call them Alawites. I mean, some people are doing that, but a lot of other people, which I don't know if we can show this on your show, Kevork. I'm wary of censorship, as you are. But there's reasons for the latest provocation that took place in the Alawite coast. There's clear reason. Everyone who's been paying attention has seen. First of all, the language. The language has clearly become genocidal in Syria. Everyone is calling Alawites pigs now. That's now acceptable. They're calling them pigs and rats. If Syria was any other country that didn't align, this regime operation didn't align with the plans of the United States, we would have seen a right to protect operation taking place with thousands of cruise missiles just bombarding Damascus and bombarding Idlib right now as we speak. In Libya, if you remember, just based on Al Jazeera translation of Qaddafi's speech, in which he was accused of calling protesters cockroaches, which he did not say. He said other things, of course. He said rats and he said some other things. But they made the connection that he said cockroaches because of the Rwanda genocide, where the Hutus called the Tutsis cockroaches. So based on that one mistranslated word, maybe intentionally mistranslated by Al Jazeera, they justified a right to protect operation. They destroyed his army, NATO intervened, and eventually, as we all know, the horrible outcome where he was killed and much more. We'll spare the audience the details. So this is way beyond the pale. This has more than crossed that red line that has been established by the civilized West. Alawites are being called pigs. There is daily provocations and violations against them, daily Alawites being just murdered off the street. I don't know how
kidnappings, kicking them out of their jobs.
Kidnappings, taking them off of their jobs and their property. I don't know. I don't think we can show this latest event that happened 3 days ago, where
they're shooting in the buildings.
Not just the buildings, they go into a store, a convenience store, and mass execute 4 young men, 4 young Alawites in the street. And they just summarily execute them. And that's happening all around. Also, you have weekly provocations and violations against Christians and Christian cemeteries being desecrated, Druze similarly. But the Alawites really are bearing the brunt of this because they have no one. They have no lobby in Paris, in Toronto, in Washington. They have no one who's there to speak up for them in Berlin or.
And Assad left them.
And Assad left them without offering them any leverage to negotiate. And so the Alawites are seen as fair game now. They're seen, and also one last thing. I'm going over here, but one last thing. Western media is largely to blame here because of they've connected the Assad regime successfully in the minds of anyone who's been paying attention to the Syrian civil war with the Alawite community en masse. So the Alawites are 3 million people, 4 million people in Syria. Not all of them worked with the regime. Some of them had government jobs where they like stamped papers. And yes, of course, there's a lot of corruption, but not every single one of them was responsible for the death and destruction and was part of the military. So Western media has been successful in selling this idea that every single one of the 3 to 4 million Alawites in Syria have blood on their hands. So Sunnis who are upset about the outcome of the Syrian civil war have been brainwashed to essentially associate all of their problems, everything that has happened in the country for the last 14 years against this specific minority group.
They used to say when there is a bombing or killing in the coastal line of Syria that an attack happened against the regime, Assad regime stronghold.
Mm.
Like when they used to bomb the southern suburbs of Beirut and level buildings, they say it's a Hezbollah stronghold. This is how you dehumanize an entire group, basically. And it's a very simple way, it's a very effective way, and they have been doing it all over again. But why, Hekmat, now there is a resistance against al-Nusra Jolani gangs? Someone is asking why Alawites are rising up now, why they didn't fight for Assad, why they surrendered Latakia so easily to HDS. Why now?
It's not well, first of all, again, the situation with Idlib was like a blitzkrieg, essentially. It all took place and ended within less than 2 weeks. So you can't fault anyone for not planning or not being able to organize more adequately when the situation happened starting in November, December of last year. But also, who said they haven't fought? I mean, the Alawite community has lost the most men in this civil war. They lost 100,000 in the army alone of their young men and their boys, essentially, in the civil war. So they have offered anything that they can offer to the civil war. And why now, to answer your question, is kind of what we already been discussing here. There's been provocations nonstop. They're happening on a daily basis. They're being beaten, treated like cattle, being called pigs, and they're going into their stores. They're summarily killing their young men and women. They're driving pickup trucks with the flag of ISIS into Alawite towns, blaring sectarian music, and all at the same time. There's another branch of HTS doing outreach to them with olive branches and telling them, listen, we're going to have a democratic Syria that is not sectarian, that is secular. And here's what's going to happen. Lay down your arms, give us all of your equipment, and we will promise you that you're going to have a dignified life in New Syria. So they're at a cross point right now. They're being disarmed slowly but surely, and they're seeing that these provocations, this aggression that is inherent with the HTS-led government is not going to stop. It's going to only increase and gradually become more and more violent. And as we see now, it has become that.
So what you're basically saying, this is the end of, let's say, in this upcoming days and weeks for mutual coexistence in Syria with the absence of a centralized government that is capable of not only protecting but treating everyone equally, then this is going to be the result. And then every group will start thinking narrow, and every group will identify itself as part of its religious and ethnic group. And then this already creates the psychological conditions in the country for partition, for Balkanization, basically.
Yeah, and we're already seeing that happen. Now we have 2 groups in Syria, 2 minority groups. Sorry, no, not 2, 3 minority groups that have made official and oftentimes non-official outreach overtures towards Israel, our historical enemy for the last 70 years in Syria, as any proud Syrian will tell you, that was the main focus. The existence of Syria was It was a sovereign nation. It was a sovereign nation that part of its modern identity, its opposition to Israel. And now you have three major parts of the Nasij al-Watani. How do you say that in English? Of the mosaic of the Syrian community, the Syrian civilization, the Druze, the Kurds, and the Alawites, numbering something like 6 to 7 million Syrians, all having in one way or another made overtures towards the Israelis, asking them for an umbrella protection. The Druze have done so with Mazlum Abdi because they see what's happening. They see the encroachments of the Syrian National Army that is fully backed and armed by Turkey coming in closer, and they see how their almost martyr level leader, Öcalan, who is essentially their Nelson Mandela, who's been in a prison off of an island off the south of Istanbul for 20 years, has been essentially coerced to sell out the cause and decide that and make a proclamation, a supposed proclamation, asking all Kurds to lay down their arms. So they're in a bind. They made outreaches to the Israelis, telling them, hey, anyone who is willing to defend us against these hordes, we're willing to work with. Similarly, the Druze right now are seeing what's taking place in the Alawite coast. You can't fault them to say, listen, we're seeing the sectarian violence here, and we know that historically we've been targets ourselves. So why shouldn't we open a potential negotiation with our neighbors to the south for at least to have a negotiating card on the table when time comes? And now the Alawites, you're seeing some parts of the Alawite movement right now, mainly like Twitter accounts and representatives of the movement online on social media, saying, listen, like, why shouldn't we? If you worked during the entire 14 years of the war, you worked clearly with the Israelis. Your lobby in the United States worked with the Israeli lobby to achieve goals of getting rid of Assad. Your soldiers were treated in Israeli hospitals. Why shouldn't we? So this sectarianism, it's against their own interests. HTS, if they have real interest of preserving this country, they're just doing a very, very poor job of it. To the extent that they invited these three parts of the mosaic of Syria to make the unthinkable gesture of speaking with the Israelis.
Now I'm reading many commentaries. I will show one of the commentaries by an Israeli influencer who is most likely working with the Israeli cyber security. Actually, this is the Ministry of Defense of Israel. I will not show the video, but I will show the people what he is basically saying here. He says al-julani took off his galabiya, put on a suit, and presented a moderate facade. Now he has removed the mask, revealing his true face, a jihadist terrorist from Al-Qaeda school committing atrocities against the Alawite civilian population. Israel will defend itself against any threat from Syria. We will remain in the security zones and Mount Hermon to protect the communities of the Golan and the Galil. We will ensure that southern Syria remains demilitarized and free of threats, and we will protect the local Druze population. Anyone who harms them will face our response. It's like on a golden plate to Israel now.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a simplistic view of the situation, but
this is what the people listen to.
No, I know. I'm just saying that there's a simplistic view that says, okay, Jolani, you're focusing all your troops and all your battalions and all your weapons, and you're making a nafir am. What's a nafir? A popular
general mobilization, yeah.
General mobilization against the Alawites, who are essentially a bunch of ragtag groups with some AK-47s, when a portion that is larger than the Gaza Strip has been taken from Syria in the south. And Israeli tanks every single day are moving around the southern districts and the southern provinces of Daraa and Suwaida. It's simplistic, but the sentiment is true, because they realize who can they bully and who they can't. So maybe it's also part of a Freudian frustration that the majority sects in Syria realize that they're getting essentially bent over by Israel, and they're taking it out on whoever they can. It's like a drunk guy who comes back home and his boss was mean to him, and then he beats his wife. So that's essentially what's happening in Syria, and it's horrible. It's painful to watch, and it's outright depressing.
Hikmat, there is something I want to shed light on. In any war, civil or different types of wars, so lots of atrocities happen, and you see many sides try to hide it. There is the pride in this of killing in Syria, and summary executions are all documented. It's the pride behind killing that is really shows you the animalistic side of this, right? Like there is complete there is no empathy, there is no, like, because they're not dealing with humans in their eyes. You said they're calling them pigs in this case. And we have one terrorist sympathizer, and probably he is himself is a terrorist, watching this live streaming now. Like, you receive comments like this saying there are no innocent Assadists or nor Alawite. And it like how much somebody has to be brainwashed to go and express openly that he is for killing, you know? Like, this is what I'm saying. Not only the soldiers or these militants are killing, they have support by ordinary people sitting on YouTube and supporting the mass killing. This is a serious case, and this is a serious issue in Syria, and we have to acknowledge that we have a serious radicalism problem nowadays in Syria.
What a shame. What a shame that someone who has that name, I don't know if that's his real name, Jamal Abdel Nasser, but brace for that name, for someone with such a rotten, fascistic, retarded ideology to have such an of Jamal Abdel Nasser, the guy who, you know, bore the torch of Arab Union, of Arab pan-Arabism, mocked the Muslim Brotherhood for how backwards they were, rightfully so. And here he is, just simply saying that 3 to 4 million Syrians of his, I assume he's Syrian, but of his brethren and his fellow compatriots are just en masse not innocent. Yeah. And they should essentially be treated as criminals without a trial. I don't have anything else to say to such scum. So,
like, this is something that is, I think about it for the future. Like, how can you reform this type of brains when the information that they receive is in the hands of Qatari and Saudi-funded outlets, and then you have a very low-level social media platforms that they follow, and which is all based on rumors, fake news, and basically injecting them with this type of, like, it seems like it's a virus. Like, sometimes when I'm watching what's happening in Syria, I get the feeling that these people are possessed by evil forces or something, you know? How can there be a normal human being who has such a thinking? Imagine me and you sit here now and say there is no innocent, like, call a group in Syria, right? Everybody is guilty. How does it make us look in front of people? We're always trying to point the finger towards the person who is responsible, towards the ideology, towards someone, or towards a power. And I'm very pessimistic with the future of Syria, and when I see what's happening now in Latakia, I think this is the end of any hope that Julani may have presented for the people, that he may form a constitution, a government, elections in the future. This is the end. This is not, after this there is not going to be acceptance for Julani to lead or govern over Syria. I'm talking about on a popular base. So this is definitely going to lead into calls for international protection. But who is going to come and protect the Alawites now, except for Russia, who can do that technically, militarily, etc. Right? There is only Russia can do it.
Yeah, and it seems like Russia is not interested. Yesterday, during the ensuing onslaught, as just massive hordes of trucks and pickup trucks and thousands and upon thousands of people started making their slow crawl towards the Alawite coast. One Russian jet took off from Hmeimim airport, but it turned out that the one jet was just protecting against incursions into the territory of the airport itself. And then this morning, we saw a massive popular demonstration of Alawites from Alawite towns and cities going to Hmeimim base and asking for Russian protection. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Russia's stretched thin. It's losing a lot in Ukraine. It's losing a lot of manpower. It's losing a lot of economic capital, just being wasted as it faces the entirety of NATO. I don't think opening another front for Syria is the right move. But again, to go back to a point you made earlier, I think I disagree with you. First, I think the West is more than willing to let this HTS carnival keep going. They're more than happy to let this clown become president and write a supposed constitution and reign over a country. I don't think that they're willing to let 14 years of their investment and their hard work just go away for nothing. So I think they're still going to try and help in any way they can. In the same way that we saw these horrific crimes against the Alawite community, you know what happened? The United Kingdom government officially removed sanctions on. Let me read to you what they removed sanctions on. The Syrian Central Bank and the Agricultural Bank, the Syrian Central Command, Shirkat al-Furat al-Nafat, one of our main oil companies in Syria, Masraf al-Zirai al-Ta'awuni, the Agricultural Collaboration Bank, Deir ez-Zor Oil Company, the Trade Bank, the National Trade Bank of Syria, and so many more, and 23 other entities within the Syrian government had sanctions imposed on them by the UK government that were all removed within, and this is historical timing. This is very unprecedented timing. On the same day that we saw massacres taking place against the Alawites, we see this massive movement of tacit support from one of the main Western backers of HTS. So see a future where it leads and continues to control Syria and this zoo that Syria is becoming. But it's going to be majoritarian rule against the minorities in the country. It's going to be a coalition of Sunnis and Tajiks and Uyghurs and Tajikistanis taking control of Syria that has all of this mosaic of different cultures and different sects and different religions, and ruling by the sword. This is the only way that it's possible.
But he can rule over the places that he's already ruling, like in Damascus, Homs, Hama, Aleppo, Idlib. But how is he going to rule over Sueda? How is he going to rule over Deir ez-Zor and Qamishli and Hasake? And now, this is what I said. Like, there was a possibility that he could have extended his authority in a soft power way over the Alawites in the coast. But now he lost that card, right? Like, I don't think after these massacres, he will be able to impose his authority over the Alawites unless he basically mass murders them.
Yeah, against the Alawites, I think it's going to be forced into subjugation. I think we're going to see a lot more violence, and I don't see that we're going to see like the formation of an Alawite sovereign statelet. I don't see that happening. There's just too much violence and too little support or even protection or even any semblance of an active lobby for the Alawite groups. There are some Alawite organizations in Paris, but they are toothless. They're unable to really move the needle here. So yeah, I see that continuing in the future. When it comes to Rojava and the SDF-led Kurdish regions in Deir ez-Zor and Hasake, as you said, in Qamishli and elsewhere, that's much more of a tougher question because at one point I see that the Kurds are playing the Israeli card. They're trying to make outreach in their lobbies, which exists en masse in the Western capitals, and trying to get any form of attention that points to the potential ethnic cleansing operations that the Turkish-backed SNA is committing in their regions. There's a lot of attention which they could negotiate into some form of an autonomous region that still flies the green flag, but it's autonomous in the way that the Erbil is in Iraq. Similarly to the Druze, I see a situation where they negotiate that card that they have of an Israeli protectorate umbrella over their territory to negotiate some treaty. But yeah, that's the extent of it. Wadi Nasara will always be a Christian enclave that is living under such, terroristic ideology that's led by HTS. The Alawites will remain under their control as well. And even like the moderate Sunni Muslims, the Sunni Muslims of Aleppo, the main families that I grew up around in Aleppo, in Mogambo, in Shahba, in even in some parts of Villat, for example, those people will also have to live under such a regime. And let's see how it goes.
But there is also the possibility that this could go in a worse place, and that is Israel comes and puts its hands over Sueda, and they would like to open this David corridor between the Golan Heights to the eastern shore of the Euphrates. So this could also go both ways. Like there might be a compromise with these components, but there could also be if this really persists, basically in Syria, this type of sectarian violence, then the people, like, if there is someone outside your home, and he's doing summary executions, the people will not think about geopolitics, strategic affairs, and all these things. They will think about survival. So if al-Julani insists on this approach, I think that Israel will definitely will entrench even further inside Syrian territories, and this could be a de facto Israeli mandate over different regions in Syria. Of course, not the coast, because the coast will be far away geographically, but at least in the south, in Sueda, and if they can have a corridor to the east, this is going to be. And the question here is, what is the purpose and the goal of the resistance in the coast? Is the goal to kick the Nusra terrorists out of the region, or to basically regime change? Because those are two different things. If it's only to liberate the area, which is their areas, then this is again we're going one step closer to Balkanization, right?
Yeah,
it's a double-edged sword. You know what I mean?
It is a double-edged sword, but again, you kind of have to lament the situation, but also recognize that, like, this was invited. They've had 3 months now. The novel government that came out of Idlib did not leave Idlib behind. They tried to apply Idlib in Syria. That's just not how it's going to work. Idlib, that's fine. Very little attention was paid when you closed down all the churches, when you confiscated Christian the lands and the property of the Christian Idlibites, and very, very little attention was paid to the signs on the street, and
yes.
The red, hijab is mandatory, Shia is kufr, and
democracy is apostasy.
Democracy is apostasy. A woman without her veil is a city without its gates. I mean, this backward is just not applicable in the major city centers of Aleppo, Damascus, Latakia, Homs, and Hama maybe, but it's not applicable to the majority, I would say, of the population. Yes, I say majority because most of the Sunnis that you and I know will not accept this. They've been accustomed to the Western ideals of women's liberation, and they've been accustomed to seeing opportunities beyond education, and seeing an identifier in themselves beyond their identity as a Sunni Muslim. They've been allowed to open their mind and understand what opportunities lay before them. So you can't apply Idlib on the rest of Syria. It's just not going to work.
My father receiving calls from Aleppo, and my father used to work in the industrial zone, and 99% are Muslim Sunnis there. And his friends are telling him basically things like they're unhappy with the Idlib rule, or the people of Idlib basically ruling over Aleppo. So even within the Sunni community, the Aleppo people are looking at the people ruling over them, and they say, no, we don't want these people to rule over us. So this is even this division is vertical in Sunnis, among the Sunnis. And I just want to ask you, what happens to the Christians under such circumstances? 80% of them have migrated outside the country during the war. And it just looks to me that if we're in 2025, probably until 2030, there is not going to be Christian left in Syria under such circumstances.
Yeah, congratulations to the West and the US, my country, first and foremost. You did it in Iraq, and now you did it in Syria. Congratulations. This is the fruits of your decades-long game in these territories, that you did not once take a pause and recognize, what does it mean that our government is on the same side as Al-Qaeda? What does it mean that our government is tacitly supporting ISIS? What does it mean that our government is willing to be so callous in weaponizing its media, in weaponizing its institutions, in weaponizing its massive lobbies, and in weaponizing its think tanks for this clearly unthought and uncalculated operation that destroyed a country? So I agree with you. The situation for the Christians in Syria is abhorrent. It's there's no clear future. Aleppo, my city, used to boast, almost 500,000 Syrian Christians, from Syriacs to Chaldeans to Maronites to even, my scout, which was we had a Jesuit scout. Can you imagine how robust the Christian communities of Syria were? How much value they added to the world? Having the perspective of Jesuits living in Aleppo, having the perspective of Chaldeans, one of the oldest sects of Christianity, having the perspectives of people who still to this day speak Aramaic, the language of Jesus. These communities have been destroyed, sometimes not directly, sometimes by losing the one breadwinner son who was enlisted in the army, and sometimes because of the terrorism activities that taken place, sometimes because some of their family members were kidnapped and sold into jihad al-nikah in the provinces that were controlled by Jabhat al-Nusra or ISIS. So I see maybe the survival of Wadi al-Nasara, the Valley of Christians in Tartus. But I don't know. It's just very bleak. The future for Christians in the country is very bleak. And one last thing, Armenians specifically are being treated with the same venom that you see that the Alawites are being treated with, because these people already fought against Armenians. The SNA already fought against Armenians in Azerbaijan. They were recruited by the Turks. So it's like again, these issues of generational trauma that have accumulated over centuries. These lands have known very little other than division, murder, bloodshed, and sectarian violence. And we're not allowed to shed that dress of trauma. Now we are allowed to. We are only forced to relitigate it again and again and again. So this sectarianism is just it's the future of Syria, unfortunately.
Ahmed, when I read the comments I receive from the pro-HTS people, they're horrendous. When they call me an Armenian as if it's an insult, and this is an honor to be an Armenian, to be honest with you. And Armenians have done nothing but brought music, culture, dancing. They built cultural centers, they built schools, they brought with them handcrafts, they brought with them education, like language, and they were peaceful. They have not carried arms, they have done nothing against the, let's say, the pro-HTS people, basically, right? And all this hatred against the Armenians, it's mind-boggling, like as if they are Azeris, you know, like it's not normal, because Armenians do not occupy their land. Armenians have not waged a war against them. So where does all this hatred come from? It's not only sectarian.
Yeah, it's because the Armenians picked up arms and defended their territories and defended their part of Aleppo city during the siege. You guys miraculously held on to El Midan during the worst parts of the siege of Aleppo, and you were unabashedly and unashamedly part of the Syrian army. You all registered and joined the army en masse. One time I was speaking to a friend who was kidnapped. He was Syriac or Orthodox, and he told me that when they figured out that he was Christian, they essentially asked for a ransom and then let him go. So once would let him go. But one of his captors was very brutally honest with him. He told him, listen, like, you're Christian, you're Ahl al-Kitab, so figure it out, and we're gonna let you go. But if you were Christian, we would have killed you. If you were Armenian, we would have killed you right then and there, because they saw Armenians more as a direct threat and as a group that picked up arms more clearly. Look, Kevork, can I share my screen and show a couple?
Yes.
So yeah, the situation again is dire, but I don't know if we can allow. Okay, let me see if I can do this. I don't know if we have any note of optimism for our audience, Kevork. I don't have any.
I don't have any too. I don't want to sell them false hopes.
Yeah, I can't share my screen. Maybe I'll just share them with you.
Send it to me. Maybe I can share it.
I'll send it to you. Here you go. This is the first tweet that I want people to listen to, and then maybe you and I will translate for them what is going on here. But
there is English as
oh, there is good. Yeah, so you gotta just the context here. You gotta understand that, again, Syria is a mosaic of different cultures, different religions. You have Alawites, you have Druze, you have Syriacs, you have Armenians, you have Circassians. When I said Syriacs, Siri thought I was talking to her.
Yeah.
So you have this mosaic of Syrian culture, and everyone does their own thing for the large part. That's what we were used to. That's what I grew up expecting. When I came out of my basketball practice in Aleppo, in Ramadan, I was more than comfortable to just open a bottle of water and drink, because I just had extra. Even though it's Ramadan, and my fellow other Muslim friends were not allowed to because they were fasting. Now you're having instances of enforced public fasting that is just brought about like a virus, as you explained earlier, into the Syrian community that is not accustomed to this. We haven't seen this before. We haven't seen people such a brash attitude showing up, patrolling the streets, and telling people that they broke. Let's watch the clip really quickly.
Guys, this is just for you to know. This is a video of people claiming to be security from al-julani's security, and they are basically bashing a civilian who is walking in the street somewhere in, I think, in the coastal line of Syria, and forcing him to get rid of the food that he has in his hands because it is Ramadan and he is forced to fast.
The food and the cigarette. This guy comes out and starts screaming at him and telling him, you're not fasting in Ramadan. This is haram. This is not what we're used to. There's other clips, and at some point, one of them, there's a Tajiki guy who goes back into his car and brandishes his AK-47. So we as Syrians, real Syrians, how could a Tajiki guy showing up in our streets, in our neighborhoods, and telling us, if you want to have a smoke during Ramadan, you're not allowed to. If you want to have a drink in the month of Ramadan, you're not allowed to. this is the essence of like this fascistic understanding of Islam that is so corrupt that just has no place in Syria, in my view.
Yeah.
Some might agree, and we will see this play out in the future.
I really don't know how to end up this conversation with you, Hikmat. I really wanted for it to be more optimistic, but we're here to tell the people what's happening in the country, and the future is very bleak, and it's a free fall. Syrians are hitting bottom rock, and I thought we already hit that long time ago, but it seems some people refuse but to dig in even more, deeper and deeper and deeper. The purpose of this stream to raise awareness for the people to know what's happening. If you are from the United States, if you're from Germany, if you're from any country that is you have a representative, you have to share this footage. You have to show them what's happening in the country and try to put pressure. And I don't think there is going to be any regional power coming to save the Syrians. So we will keep an eye on it.
Kevork, just one last thing, if you can open the last link that I sent you.
The thing is, I don't have a Facebook. That's why I can't open it. I locked my Facebook completely, and I just checked, and it doesn't open it.
Okay, well, I'll just send you a picture
Yes.
on Telegram. If you can just share it, please, Kevork. So one of our family friends in Syria is currently kidnapped, and we don't know where he is.
Wow.
And I'm hoping that anyone who watches this, who knows anything about what's going on in Syria, who might have some connections or has any idea who's Syrian, who could, keep that person's name in mind and reach out to us.
What's the name of the person, please?
I shared the picture with you. His name is Musa Dahi, and he's from Homs. He was one of our family close friends. He was a pallbearer along with me when my grandfather passed away 2 years ago. We bore the coffin together. So this is him. This is what he looks like. He has been gone since February 2nd.
Wow.
And don't know anything about him. Some people have pretended to have claimed, some like military people have claimed that they are the group that has him, but we sent them some money and then they disappeared. So we don't know where he is. Yeah, if anyone knows, please reach out.
Guys, we shared the name, we shared the picture. If anyone in Syria have seen إذا حدا بسوريا شاف هذا الشخص اسمه مكتوب
موسى
فؤاد ضاحي. هو خرج من منزله بالحميدية بحمص الساعة 7:30 صباحا يوم الأحد 2 شباط 2015 ولم يعد حتى الآن. والخاطفين أخذوا مصاري واختفوا وبعد ذلك.
ما بنعرف حتى إذا هن الخاطفين حقيقيين، بس في
نعم.
مجموعة ناس تواصلوا معنا وقالوا لنا إنه هن معهم موسى، بس ما أثبتوا لنا إثبات حياة. ما عطونا صورة، ما عطونا فيديو، فحاليا ما عندنا أي فكرة وينه.
We are talking in Arabic just right now, guys, for if there is anyone watching this in Arabic from Syria or outside Syria, if anyone has seen him, they have how they can contact, who they can contact in this
just
case.
Just send me a direct message on my Twitter.
Guys, his X account is in the description below. Please hit him a follow, okay?
Yeah. Thank you, Kevork.
Thank you so much, Habibi, for coming to the show. I really appreciate it. And it's sad times, it's tough times, but we had to do this for the people to know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important. It's important because, this is a real potential genocide, unlike what was happening in Benghazi when the Western media started lying and started saying that we have people who are selling Viagra. All of this turned out to be complete nonsense.
Wow.
We have a real situation where we could have a real genocide in the 21st century, and it is incumbent on everyone to do what they can to spread awareness about this potential mass pogroms that could be taking place, have already started taking place in the country.
Guys, thank you so much for the support that you're doing. But if there is any way for you to support Syrian family, like any penny helps, believe me. Like their family is living on $100 per month. So if you're Syrian or non-Syrian and you know someone inside Syria, supporting them financially, that would be amazing. And their family is living on a piece of bread. So that would be amazing. Hekmat, you have to go, and I will try to end this conversation with you now. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, guys, for coming to the show. Please spread awareness. If you like to use any parts of this conversation, like clips from it, post it on your social media in Arabic or in English, raise awareness, and keep speaking about Syria just like you speak about Palestine. Okay? And we will see
Thank you, Kevork.
you Monday, Habibi. Yalla salam.
See you. Bye.
Guys, this was all for today, and I wish you peace. Peace for Syria, peace for Palestine, peace for all the peaceful people. And this will be the last stream for this week. The next one is on Monday. And the 10th of March, 2024, I will keep an eye on what's happening in Syria, and I will come back with more updates, okay? Salam.